Imagine being summoned to another world as a hero and mocked when given a skill no one has ever heard of. So you choose to live out your days in peace, but your online grocery skill is more capable than it seems, naturally drawing unwanted attention from the strongest beings that roam and govern this new world. Our story opens with our MC Mukuda Tsushi along with 3 other students being summoned before a princess, only to have their skills appraised by hooded figures. Kaido Saito is appraised to be a holy sword wielder, whilst Kanon Uno and Ryo Yoshida possess sacred magic along with multiple elemental affinities. The princess begs the heroes to save their kingdom of VIDZ, but as the hooded figure scans Muta's stats, he's revealed to be a 27-year-old salaryman with the skill Online Grocery. Immediately, Mukuda hears that his unique skill has never been heard of before, ostracized as it seems the 3 other heroes are far more overpowered than himself. With everyone brought before the kingdom's king, they all learn about the Demon King invading the VIDZ kingdom, prompting the king himself to ask for the heroes' help, and in exchange they'll be sent home once their duty is done. Heroically, Kaito, Uno, and Yoshida all agree to help the king, but Mukuda realizes something is sketchy about this whole situation, choosing to speak up as he asks to be pardoned. That way he can live a peaceful life away from this drama. Surprisingly, Mukuda is allowed to leave, handed 20 gold coins, but Mukuda is unsure about the worth of said coins. Passing through town, Mukuda garners strange looks from the town's folks, choosing to purchase a change of clothes only to pay others for information he is searching for. Mukuda chooses to stop by a grocery store to pick up some food only to pick out a place to stay, slumping into his bed as he is grateful he chose a more peaceful life. Mukuda points out how the royals were carrying such luxurious items, showing signs of greed. But before Mukuda makes plans to leave the country, he calls for his status window to appear. Mukuda reads that he is level 1 and has the skill appraise and item box. A good turnout, as he doesn't need to carry around things. As for his online grocery skill, he's still unsure how it works. Fidgeting around for a bit, Mukuda ends up tapping on the skill, only to be frightened when an ordinary-looking grocery website pops out in front of him. Sifting through the items, Mukuda starts by adding water bottles to his cart, only to move on to some bread he can eat right away. When he goes to check out, he is asked to pay for his meal, choosing to pay with a silver coin, only to receive what he ordered magically via a cardboard box. Mukuda is impressed by such a skill, swiftly munching on his bread, as he reasons such a skill was unknown to the royals and could be used to sustain him and make a profit in this new world. Making his way out of town, Mukuda is advised to head to the town of Keels near the border of the kingdom, barely managing to hitch a ride with other travelers. During his journey, he makes some small talk with a traveling merchant, learning that the merchant plans to sell some soap in Keels, an item that is considered quite luxurious. Mukuda wonders why the merchant doesn't just store his luggage in his item box. But the merchant says the item box skill is quite rare, with only 1 in 1,000 having such a skill, whereas the appraisal skill itself is the rarest of them all, with only heroes being able to wield such skills. Mukuda hears that appraisal items are precious and are strictly held by the guilds and countries. But when the merchant wonders why Mukuda is asking him such things, Mukuda manages to conceal his rare skills, reasoning that his secrets should be safe as long as no one appraises him. When a merchant hears that Mukuda is planning on staying in Keels permanently, the merchant says it's a good idea, seeing as trouble is brewing in VIDZ and rumors say the kingdom's borders will be closed soon. Right on cue, Mukuda arrives at a stop only to learn that all travel services have been suspended. Visiting a tavern, Mukuda chats with some knights, surprised that the knights plan on shifting their jobs to monster hunting, seeing as a war starting would be less favorable for them. Visiting the town's guild, Mukuda greets the receptionist only to request for escorts to help guard him to the kingdom of Venan by foot. Seeing as such a request is quite taxing, the receptionist asks that Mukuda pay 8 gold coins for his job, but seeing as he has no other choice, Mukuda reluctantly pays up. Immediately, the receptionist calls out to Werner and his party, prompting Werner from the Iron Will to introduce himself as a C-rank adventurer. Seeing as he wants to head out as soon as possible, Mukuda says he'll cook for the gang to save on expenses, something Werner is grateful for, as he says he'll get his party ready to set off tomorrow morning. Cutting to the next day, Werner introduces Vincent the swordsman, Rita the scout, Roman their mage, and finally Franca the healer. Starting on their journey, the gang remembered to take breaks in between, allowing Mukuda to show off his item box skill, where he retrieves a cooking stove and pot. Mukuda remembers that a magic stove would cost him 50 gold, so instead he used his online store to purchase a gas stove, allowing him to whip up some soup and sandwiches for the gang. With every mouthful, the gang are impressed by Mukuda's cooking, but Mukuda is revealed to have used his online grocery skill to pick out some soup packets along with pre-made sandwiches. Seeing as his escort party is slowly warming up to him, they all agree to continue their journey, but with Rita as their front guard, she suddenly orders the gang to halt. Out from the nearby trees, two massive bugs fly towards them, prompting Werner and Vincent to dash towards the monsters, instantly slaying them. As Franca heals the party, Rita is seen reporting sightings of a red boar up ahead, but with Ramon's help, they escort the boar directly towards them. Stepping up to the plate once more, Vincent and Werner tag team the massive beast before them, but even as C ranks, they easily slay the creature. Harvesting the creature's flesh, the gang reasoned they can sell the hide and fangs of the boar for a good price. As for the flesh, Mukuda offers to store them in his item box. With the sun setting, the gang gather around Mukuda's cooking, all choosing to turn their backs to allow Mukuda to cook comfortably. Mukuda decides to combine the harvested bacon with some vegetables, topping the meal off with some sausages only to serve the meal with some bread. Seeing everyone scoffing down his warm stew, Mukuda is relieved they enjoy his cooking. But when Mukuda serves up a second round, he wonders why the others are so impressed by his simple cooking. Mukuda chooses to appraise the other's stats, speechless upon discovering Rita has outrageous stats for someone of her stature. Suspecting something, Mukuda appraises the stew he made, realizing the food items he brought using the online grocery store are giving his party MP and strength boost, a horrifying discovery, as such a skill can become dangerous in the wrong hands. Choosing to keep his discovery a secret, we pan out to see a mysterious creature stalking our party from the bushes. Continuing their journey the next day, they make substantial progress towards the Venan Kingdom, all reasoning that it'll be 2 to 3 days left until they'll part ways. But seeing as night has fallen, they all prioritize setting up camp. Heading off on his own, Mukuda takes out some of the harvest boar meat, first slicing them into pieces only to marinate them in some ginger sauce he purchased online. Next, Mukuda finally chops up some cabbage, only to retrieve his gas stove, beginning to fry the marinated pork, but the sheer smell of the pork draws in the attention of the onlookers. Serving up the ginger-marinated pork alongside the cabbage, the gang are instantly blown away by the succulent flavors that fills their mouths with each bite. But as Mukuda goes into the logistics of his cooking, Werner begins to quiver, pointing out the monstrous creature that has snuck up on them. The creature demands to be fed, forcing Mukuda to feed it some of the marinated pork, but seeing as the monster's hunger is yet to be satiated, Mukuda rushes off to cook some more. Batch after batch, Mukuda hastily feeds the creature, finally able to satisfy its hunger only after he's exhausted his supplies. Having taken a liking to Mukuda, the monster agrees to form a contract with Mukuda, making it his familiar, and seeing as he doesn't have a choice, Mukuda reluctantly agrees, turning white when he hears the monster demand to be fed 3 times a day. The monster says they must be given a name, refusing to accept an ordinary name, but seeing as the monster is a Finrer, Mukuda settles for Fel. Proceeding the next day, the gang gets some horrified looks, especially since Fel is nonchalantly trotting alongside them. Plus, in the past, a Finrer destroyed the entire country. Werner says Fel is guaranteed to draw attention from Venan's higher-ups, but Mukuda panics, seeing as he doesn't want to draw attention to himself. As the gang set up for lunch, Mukuda realizes they're running low on the boar meat they harvested, demanding that Fel go hunt for more meat, seeing as Fel requested that every meal contain meat. Fel admits that's a reasonable request, immediately dashing off to hunt down some prey. But in the meantime, Mukuda is praised for managing to command around the powerful Fenrir. At that moment, Fel returns with the corpse of a rock bird, a B-rank monster that Werner admits even their party couldn't take out. With the gang helping to extract the bird's flesh, Mukuda retrieves some teriyaki sauce, choosing to fry up the bird meat alongside the sauce only to serve it alongside some onion soup. Mukuda chooses to serve his party first, choosing to spend the rest of the time cooking and feeding Fel, ultimately using up the entirety of the rock bird. Having finally made it to the border of Kingdom Venin, Mukuda notices the kingdom's knights rallying outside the border, realizing that it's due to Fel's presence. Werner offers to speak with the knights, heading first towards the border, only for the rest of the gang to follow suit, ultimately greeted by Edgar, the captain of the knights. Edgar demands to know what Fel's intentions of entering the kingdom are, but Fel simply utters that it is Mukuda's familiar and it has no reason to harm the kingdom of Venin. Seeing as Fel is quite tamed, Edgar permits the gang to cross their border, but gets intrigued seeing the legendary Fenrir listen to Mukuda so willingly. Entering the checking station, Mukuda realizes he doesn't have a guild card, so he is forced to pay to enter, but regardless, Mukuda is just relieved to have made it to his destination. Werner warns Mukuda that the king will surely want to meet with Fel and Mukuda, but Mukuda reveals he won't be staying for long, as he plans to travel the world. Werner suggests that Mukuda apply at the Adventurers or Merchant Guild to ensure he can cross into any country without needing to pay a tax like earlier. Mukuda reasons that the Merchant Guild is best for him since he can sell the items he cooks for a profit, but the gang remind Mukuda that the Adventurers Guild can help carve up the monsters Fel catches, and Mukuda can still make a profit from the monster droppings. Seeing Mukuda conflicted, the gang reveal that Mukuda can apply to be both a merchant and adventurer, all heading towards the town's guild, but during the process Mukuda pays another tax to enter into the town. Out of nowhere, Mukuda is greeted by Edmund, a servant of Margrave Lindell, swiftly inviting Mukuda and Fel to meet his master. Mukuda hesitates to accept, but Edmund is very persistent, forcing Fel to step in, declaring that it knows Edmund and his master are after its powers. Fel successfully scares away Edmund, leading Werner to explain that nobles are only after status and power, plus the Margraves won't have enough manpower to force Fel into submission. Fel mentions how the ancient dragon it fought 400 years ago was the only creature worthy of its time, but seeing as their escort job is finished, Werner asks for Mukuda's signature to confirm they finished their task. Mukuda realizes he can read and write, a feature of being a hero, but just like that, Mukuda part ways with the others who are heading to the Adventurers Guild. Mukuda and Fel choose to visit the Merchants Guild, entering the building only to draw the attention of everyone in the room. But regardless, Mukuda greets the receptionist Michaela, asking to register as a merchant. Michaela gets to work explaining that the Merchants Guild isn't owned by any country and is composed of 5 ranks, with one's yearly fee, business type, and overall operation size determining said rank. Mukuda says he plans on traveling and opening food stalls where he pleases, something that classifies Mukuda into the lowest rank of iron. With Mukuda finally registered and given his merchant's card, he confirms that the guild buys monster drops. But first, Mukuda checks into his inn, showing off the stable Fel will have to stay in for the night. With it getting late, Mukuda gets started on dinner, piling up some meat for Fel only to wonder how he can satisfy his craving for rice. Mukuda chooses to invest in another stove to cook the rice, all whilst grilling the steaks in a separate pan, intentionally keeping them quite rare, just how Fel likes its meat. Topping the steak with some soy sauce, Fel instantly gobbles up the meat, demanding more, but Mukuda chooses to switch out the sauces to see which combination Fel prefers. After feeding Fel, Mukuda gets excited seeing as his rice is finally ready, carefully scooping out a bowl of rice only to top it with some steak and sauce, immediately devouring the meal. With Fel helping to clean up any leftover food, Mukuda is seen leaping into bed, but remembers to prepare the items he plans to sell the next day. Heading to the Merchants Guild the next day, Mukuda shows off the items he plans to sell, but Michaela gets shocked upon inspecting the items, quickly asking Mukuda to follow her to a separate room. Introduced to the Guildmaster, the Guildmaster reveals that the salt and pepper Mukuda plans on selling is so valuable it could be a gift for royals. The guildmaster asks to personally purchase the item, offering up 4 gold coins for the salt and 10 gold coins for the pepper, piquing Mukuda's interest as he purchased the salt and pepper for a measly 5 copper coins, each from his online store. Mukuda remembers that pepper used to be as valuable as gold in the past, but seeing Mukuda deep in thought, the guildmaster mistakes it for hesitation, choosing to offer up 17 gold for both the salt and pepper. With Mukuda accepting the purchase, he reasons he shouldn't exploit such a trade too often, heading outside only to direct his attention to the Adventurers Guild. Mukuda is greeted by Vianca, the guild's receptionist, who hands Mukuda a form to fill out for his guild membership, paying no attention to Mukuda, only to toss him his guild card once the paperwork is done. Seeing Vianca brush him off, Mukuda asks for an explanation on how the rank and quest systems work, prompting Vianca to reluctantly utter that adventures all start at J rank and the highest attainable rank is S rank. Adventurers can accept a quest 1 rank higher or equal to one's current rank, and that there is a validity period for an adventurer's rank. Plus, G ranks must accept a quest each month. Viewing the quest board, Mukuda reasons he should get started on a herb gathering quest. But first, Mukuda whips up some more steak for Fel. Mukuda gets curious as to how strong Fel truly is, using his appraisal skill on the beast, only to be speechless seeing Fel's maxed out stats. Waking up bright and early the next day, Mukuda heads to wash his face, only to hear Fel growling at him, demanding to be fed a filling breakfast. Putting together a quick breakfast, Mukuda and Fel head out for their herb gathering quest, reasoning that Mukuda himself should gather some herb whilst Fel hunts for their next meal. Fel suddenly detects monsters roaming nearby, swiftly casting a protective barrier to ensure its master's safety, only to part ways as Fel rushes to hunt down some monsters. Taking out the quest, Mukuda sees that he needs to gather Caillou and Maj grass, using his appraisal on the nearby field only to see that there is only weeds growing nearby. Heading a little deeper, Mukuda successfully hunts down both Caillou and Maj grass, reasoning he should take back some extra just to be safe. Seeing as his quest is already finished, Mukuda gets started on lunch, using his online store to purchase some beef, pork, meat sauce, and pasta. Mukuda first dices and sauté the onions, only to add the meats and sauce, but suddenly Fel returns with another rock bird. Fel mentions that it hunted other prey and left it nearby, but for now Mukuda focuses on boiling and salting the pasta, serving the pasta and the sauce only to top off the dish with some Parmesan cheese and parsley. Inspecting the dish, Fel is skeptical at the vine-looking dish, but with a single slurp, Fel begins to devour the spaghetti dish before him. Mukuda is glad he can still enjoy the foods he loved in his original world, suddenly bursting out laughing when he sees Fel is all dirty from shoving its face in the meat dish. Finally heading to inspect Fel's other prey, Mukuda scans the monster corpses, realizing that Fel has brought back a giant deer, black serpent, and murderous grizzly only to store them away in his item box. Mukuda does notice that Fel has brought back some orcs, skeptical if they're edible, but Fel reassures Mukuda that humans eat orcs all the time. Seeing as everything is done, Fel offers to give Mukuda a ride back into town, instantly dashing through the forest and towards town, but Fel's sheer speed almost knocks out Mukuda. Back inside the guild, Vianca is impressed that a G rank managed to gather so many herbs, handing Mukuda the pay for the quest along with the excess herbs he picked. Before Vianca leaves, Mukuda mentions how he would like to sell some monsters his familiar had hunted down, but Vianca is clearly too distracted adoring how fluffy Fel looks. Vianca points Mukuda to the guild's butcher, but upon learning that Mukuda has quite a heap of monster corpses he needs to sell, the butcher asks Mukuda to follow him out back. The butcher is glad to have finally met Mukuda, mentioning how there were rumors of him around town, but when Mukuda shows off the A rank and B rank monsters Fel slaughtered, the butcher becomes speechless. Mukuda says he needs to harvest the meat from all of the corpses, something the butcher says he'll have ready by tomorrow. But seeing as Fel is getting hungry, the butcher agrees to harvest an orc first. With a slab of pork in front of him, Mukuda says he'll use the parsley and Parmesan cheese from earlier, first slicing up the pork only to pound it thinner, covering it with an egg flour mixture and finally frying in the pan. Mukuda chooses to add parsley and cheese to the dish, serving up 2 styles of pork piccata along with any leftover sauces. As our duo devour the meal, we see Mukuda returning to the butcher the next day, amazed the man was able to separate everything in a single day. The butcher also hands Mukuda his pay for the monster droppings, frightening Mukuda when he learns his payment is 202 gold coins. The butcher says the orc testicles, boar skin, and monster fangs are ultimately what yielded such a high payout, plus A rank and stronger monsters drop magic stones. Mukuda is grateful to the butcher for teaching him such things, hearing that the butcher used to be an adventurer and that Mukuda could probably get away with calling Fel a great wolf instead of a Fenrir to attract less attention. With nothing left to do in town, Mukuda and Fel continue their exploration of this new world, choosing to travel all day only to stop and set up camp once the sun begins to set. Seeing as Fel had earned him a lot today, Mukuda asks what Fel wants for dinner, but as Mukuda scrolls through his online store for takeout food options, Fel can't help but drool profusely. Settling on an assortment of meats, Fel takes his time gobbling each individual lump of meat, but off to the side Mukuda starts to cook up some Japanese black wagyu. Serving up a single wagyu steak to Fel. Fel is quite disappointed at his portion size, but upon tasting the steak, Fel can't help but admire the sheer tenderness the way the wagyu feels in its mouth. Mukuda hears that since monsters roam the world, there is no need to raise or domesticate animals. But as the duo wrap up their well-earned meal for the night, Fel is seen all fired up, noting how Mukuda's meal is giving it extra strength that could even rival the ancient dragon and its sworn rival. Curious, Mukuda appraises Fel's stats, shocked to see his food has buffed all of Fel's stats by 50%. Too restless, Fel swiftly casts another barrier to protect Mukuda whilst it's gone, speeding off into the night only to leave Mukuda to set up his sleeping bed for the night. Happily tucking himself in as Fel's barrier is putting him at ease. With Mukuda fast asleep, we see Fel encountering a rock bird only to take it down with a single swipe. Up next, a giant deer catches Fel's attention, but a single lightning spell dispatches the deer. Noticing a swarm of orcs nearby, Fel leaps into the epicenter of the gathering, immediately wiping out the horde with a torrential wind spell, only to notice an orc general appear. Sadly, the orc general's movements are far too slow, allowing Fel to slay it with a single swipe, but suddenly a chimera appears. Having just gotten started, Fel's roar sounds throughout the night, and by daytime Mukuda is in disbelief seeing all the monsters Fel had slain whilst he was sleeping. Hearing that Fel was able to take down a chimera with a single attack, Mukuda declares that the black wagyu will be removed from their meals moving forwards, especially since it gave Fel too great of a buff. In the coming days, we see Mukuda cook up a cockatrice with some soy sauce and lemon glaze, sitting down to enjoy a sandwich only to ask how Fel hunts. Fel says he uses mainly his teeth and claws, and only uses magic to eliminate weaker creatures, mostly wind magic, seeing as Fel had been blessed by the goddess Ninrir. Mukuda wonders if he can use magic too, opening up his system terminal only to confirm that he has a magic stat, but wonders how he can cast his first spell. Fel says you only need to think of casting a spell to use magic, but Mukuda says a genius like Fel won't be able to teach him, choosing instead to picture a fireball, but when Mukuda tries casting a spell, nothing happens. Seeing Mukuda embarrassed, Fel says Mukuda must allow magic to flow through his body first, asking Mukuda to touch its fur to feel the sensation of magic flowing through him, only to ask Mukuda to replicate the feeling himself. Setting up a can, Mukuda conjures a mini fireball, but his cast strength is far too pathetic to strike the target. Fel suggests that they engage in actual monster combat to help Mukuda grow, but upon seeing Mukuda wimping out, Fel drags Mukuda deeper into the forest. Discovering some goblins, Fel asks Mukuda to attack them, but Mukuda fears that the goblin swarm will be too much for him. Annoyed, Fel howls, drawing the goblins' attention towards Mukuda, who hurriedly flees. Running alongside Mukuda, Fel instructs Mukuda to continuously cast spells to survive only to leave for now, as Fell wants to hunt monsters as well. Seeing no other way out, Mokuda manages to fire off 2 fireballs, but accidentally trips over a rock when he gets too distracted. With the horde now pouncing on Mokuda, Mokuda is suddenly protected by the barrier Fell had casted earlier, and seeing as he still needs to fight off the goblins, Mokuda lets rip several more fireballs. With only a few remaining, Mokuda musters his remaining strength to cast a final greater fireball, but having no strength left, Mokuda collapses to the ground. As the remaining goblins approach Mokuda, Fell arrives intercepting the goblins, but as Mokuda finally falls unconscious, he awakens later that night angry at Fell for putting him through that experience. Fell says Mokuda should be thankful since Mokuda can now use magic. Plus, Fell says he can detect Mokuda's level has risen, something Mokuda confirms as he is now level 3 with the fire magic unlocked. As a gift, Fell shows off a Goblin King he has hunted, and even though goblin flesh is not edible, Fell says Mokuda can still cash in the magic stone the goblin has. Fell says he wants to be rewarded with a meal, hinting at the fact that a Wagyu steak may suffice, but Mokuda says he won't be serving Wagyu anytime soon, especially since Fell was too energetic afterwards. When Mokuda prepares to start cooking, he suddenly collapses onto his knees once more, declaring that they'll have to buy stuff online for their dinner, seeing as he's too tired. Served up a massive plate of dessert buns. Fell watches as Mokuda nibbles on a melon bun, following his lead as he too devours his platter of desserts. As Mokuda serves up seconds, he warns Fell not to eat too many sweets or he'll become sick, but Fell says his blessing from the goddess Ninrir makes him immune to any poisons of debuffs. Mokuda can't help but get jealous, screaming out into the night sky to be blessed as well, all whilst a mysterious being listens to Mokuda's pleas. Reaching their next town, Mokuda is cornered by some knights who are threatened by Fell, but luckily Mokuda's guild card calms down the knights, seeing as Fell is registered as Mokuda's familiar. Fell gets annoyed when others call him a great wolf, using telepathy to communicate with Mokuda, seeing as they are master and slave technically. One of the knights reminds Mokuda that he is responsible for any damages Fell may inflict, but as the duo head through town, they reason they should find a map to see where they're heading next. Checking into the Elmira's Inn, Mokuda asks Fell to wait for him only to leave Fell with some snacks so he doesn't run off. Visiting the town's bookstore, Mokuda stumbles onto a book that teaches basic magic, only to be shocked to hear the book will cost 7 gold coins, especially since paper is quite rare in this world. As for a world map, Mokuda hears that such an item is considered a nationally restricted item, ultimately forced to leave empty-handed. Having failed to learn anything from the town's library as well, Mokuda returns to a starving Fell, annoyed to hear that Fell wants to be fed. Seeing as they need food quickly, Mokuda chooses to purchase some yakitori and tonkatsu from his online store, pleasing Fell as they resemble the boar and rock bird they ate previously. Needing to eat himself, Mokuda ends up steaming some rice, only to enjoy it with some leftover pork cutlets and dipping sauce, all whilst Fell drools over the meal. Exploring town the next day, Mokuda stumbles into a bar only to approach some men to ask them a few questions. When the men refuse, Mokuda buys them a few drinks, cheering up the mood as they gladly invite Mokuda to sit down. Mokuda starts by uttering that he traveled from the kingdom of Rager and it's his first time in the kingdom of Venin. But immediately, the men mention how the kingdom of Rager has started several wars in an attempt to claim more land once the new king took over. Mokuda hears that the kingdom of Ermin and the kingdom of Leonhard in the east are safe places, plus there are dungeons for adventurers to explore. Mokuda is grateful for the information, but voices how upsetting it is he has yet to find a map. Coincidentally, the men before him reveal a map of their own, having obtained it from a fellow adventurer. The men offer to pass it down to Mokuda, seeing as they've already memorized it, even agreeing to sell it to Mokuda for a measly gold coin. Unable to pass up the opportunity, Mokuda agrees to buy the map. But as the men leave, the remaining people in the bar laugh at Mokuda, revealing that the map he bought could have easily been purchased at the guild for a single silver coin. Taking the hit and learning from the loss, Mokuda and Fell continue on feet eastwards to the country next to the sea, a location that should house sea serpents and krakens. In the realm of gods, we see Ninrir wondering why Fel had contracted with a human, continuing to monitor Fel and Makuta. Back with our duo, we see Fel speeding past a forest, only to arrive near the sea. Fel says he's fiending for some seafood, nonchalantly approaching the body of water only to unleash a devastating lightning spell that slays countless fish. Fel says Makuta is free to collect as many fish as he needs, and the remainder should return back to normal after their paralysis wears off. Getting to work, Makuta starts off by collecting some violet trouts, only to encounter a bigger-looking king trout. But when Fel asks Makuta to retrieve a purple-looking fish, Makuta appraises it to be a poisonous lake fish. Makuta instantly tosses the poisonous fish back into the water, reminding Fel that his human body won't be able to withstand poison, instead settling for the other fishes. Makuta and Fel proceed to gather firewood only to start a fire with Makuta's fire magic, followed by Makuta buying flour, butter, and mushrooms. Next, Makuta washes and guts the fishes, seasoning them with salt only to skewer and roast them over a fire. Moving on to the king trout, Makuta begins filleting the fish, switching things up by wrapping up the king trout in some foil alongside some seasoning, placing this batch alongside the fire to cook. Finally, Makuta moves on to the remainder of the fish, battering them only to grill them like normal. With 3 different fish dishes completed, the boys tuck into their dinner, prompting Makuta to take out a can of beer to pair it with the fishy meal. With every bite of fish and sip of beer, Makuta gets lost in the endless flavors in his mouth. But suddenly Fel cries for more fish, forcing Makuta back onto his feet as he continues to fry up some more fish. Having stuffed themselves, Makuta mentions how their dinner reminded him of camping, but as he heads to clean up, he suddenly bumps into a slime. Fel reasons that they shouldn't worry about an insignificant creature like a slime ruining their night. And when Makuta pokes at the slime, he can't help but adore it. Checking its stats, Makuta confirms that the slime was born 3 days ago and has very low stats. But when Makuta sees that the slime is hungry, he feels bad since there is no food left. Surprisingly, the slime hops over to the rubbish that is piled up, slowly dissolving the rubbish Makuta was supposed to clean up, but Makuta steps in when it begins to dissolve his cooking utensils. In mere moments, the slime had helped Makuta clean up any trash left over, earning some praise from Makuta as he gives the slime a tight hug. Fel reveals that the affection Makuta just showed the slime created a contract with it, and now the slime is Makuta's familiar, something Makuta confirms when he checks his status window. With a new companion added, Makuta gives the slime the name of Sway, cutting to a few days later where Makuta is training his earth magic, having discovered recently he had an affinity for it. Seeing Makuta's slow progression, Fel offers to find more monsters to challenge Makuta's growth, but Makuta blatantly refuses, instead sitting down for a break alongside Sway. Makuta notes how big Sway has grown, having progressed from level 1 to 8 in 3 days. Strange since Sway has only been eating the trash that's been piling up. Seeing as everyone is getting hungry, Makuta quickly whips together some miso stir-fried orc meat atop some rice and lettuce, something Fel instantly gobbles up. Makuta had made extra, so Sway could eat with them, all 3 sitting down to appreciate the salty and tender dish. As Fel and Sway dust off their plates, they both ask for seconds, only to cut to later that night where our trio are stuffed. Checking Sway's stats, Makuta confirms that his cooked meals give temporary buffs, adoring Sway as it helps clean off the dirty dishes and bowls left over from his cooking, reminding Makuta that they should celebrate Sway's first meal. Makuta chooses to prepare some red bean buns and hot tea for everyone, a food that makes Fel crave desserts more and is an item that makes Sway hop around gleefully. The next day, Fel is seen staring off into the distance only to wake Makuta up as they need to discuss something serious. Fel reveals that Ninrir had sent him a divine message last night, uttering that Ninrir is willing to bless Makuta if he offers up a payment of sweets every week. Although Makuta is confused, Fel continues by stating that the blessing Makuta will receive is a minor blessing that can still grant immunity to most illnesses, but instant death and powerful curses are still a threat. Luckily, such a blessing will boost Mukuta's magic capabilities, but Fell emphasizes that Mukuta needs to offer up sweets once every week, annoying Mukuta as it's obvious that Ninrir clearly just likes sweets. As Mukuta accepts such a deal, he wonders how he can send his offering to Ninrir, hearing that any item can be made into an altar as long as Mukuta means what he is praying for. The final thing Fell mentions is that the first offering must contain certain dessert breads, but seeing as there is no reason to refuse, Mukuta prepares the breads alongside some coffee. With his hands clasped, Mukuta offers up the food items to Ninrir. Watching the food items vanish, and in exchange Mukuta receives a minor blessing from the goddess. Following Ninri, she is seen quivering, having finally received the dessert breads she had been watching our trio eat. With a single bite, Ninrir is overjoyed by the delectable treat, even flushing down the scrumptious treats with the coffee Mukuta sent only to continue to stuff her face with the other sweets. Getting back to training, Mukuta tries out one of his rock spells, amazed to see that Ninrir's blessing has improved his strength and control over his magic. Additionally, Sway has reached level 13, motivating Mukuta to work harder and get stronger. But after a few hours of training, Mukuta decides to refuel with some sweets. Combining some chocolate with some coffee, Mukuta shares his meal with Sway, both awaiting Fell's return. After some more waiting, Fell finally returns, instantly sniffing out the chocolate Mukuta had snacked on whilst he was gone, forcing Mukuta to purchase some more chocolate to quench Fell's cravings. To make things worse, Ninrir telepathically orders for Mukuta to send her some chocolate as well, shyly uttering that she had already finished the sweets he sent her, so she needs some more. Reluctantly, Mukuta agrees, only for Fell to rush Mukuta onto his back, horrified to hear that Mukuta's training isn't going well, only to whisper under his breath that they'll need to visit a certain location after all. Arriving before a cave, Fell utters that it is actually a dungeon before them and Mukuta will need battle experience to train his new earth magic. Seeing Mukuta try to sneak away, Fell swiftly tosses Mukuta back towards the dungeon, reassuring Mukuta that the dungeon is only filled with weaklings, but Mukuta says they're weak only to Fell. Fell reminds Mukuta that one day he won't be able to fully protect Mukuta, finally giving Mukuta the courage to tackle the dungeon. But first Mukuta declares he'll need to eat first. Ordering tons of takeout, Mukuta finally tells Fell about the stats boost his food grants, and since Mukuta can't tell what foods boost which stats, he simply begins to gorge on spread in front of him. Only tasting each food item, Mukuta hands the leftovers to Sway, who helps clean up any mess, whilst also leveling up from consuming non-food items. As Mukuta finishes up tasting the desserts, he comments on how full he is, and upon checking his stats, he confirms that everything is boosted by 20%. With Fell and Sway eating the leftovers, Mukuta sees that their stats went up as well, and with Fell casting his barrier on Mukuta, they finally enter the dungeon with Mukuta wielding a sword. As Mukuta slowly treks into the cave, he suddenly encounters a slime, wondering if he should slay it since Sway is present, but in an instant Sway spits out some acid, instantly slaying the opposing slime. Fell is impressed that Sway had learnt such a skill, all watching as Mukuta follows up with a stone bullet to attack an incoming slime, only for Sway to finish off a second approaching slime. Mukuta is freaked out hearing that the dungeon will absorb anything that dies in it, including the slime corpses before them. But as they venture deeper, Fell warns Mukuta that horned rabbits are on the next floor. With the rabbits rushing Mukuta, he aimlessly swings his sword around, only to move on the next floor where Mukuta faces some goblins with his fire magic. Mukuta does wonder why monsters are still attacking with Fell present, hearing that monsters in the dungeon attack anything that enters, suddenly running into kobolds on the next floor. At first, Mukuta attempts to flee, but seeing no other escape, Mukuta manages to unleash 2 earth projectiles that flatten the kobolds, amazing Mukuta himself. Fell reminds Mukuta to grow stronger whilst in the dungeon, all heading into the deepest floor of the dungeon. But horrifically, Mukuta encounters hundreds of kobold guarding the last floor. When Mukuda tries running away again, Fel stops him, allowing Sway to help this time with clearing the floor. Plus, Fel himself can always step in if things get hectic. Seeing Sway pumped up, Fel shoves the pair towards the enemy, alerting the kobolds to Mukuda's presence as they all simultaneously lunge at Mukuda. Luckily, Fel's barrier repels the attacking monsters, giving Sway the opening to slay several kobolds with its acid spit. Mukuda rushes to join in, casting several stone bullets in tandem with Sway's acid spit to clear out the majority of the attackers. After a while, only 2 kobolds remain, both seemingly fleeing the scene, but out of nowhere their corpses are flung out of hiding, revealing the boss of the dungeon, the Kobold King. Fel says the king has appeared since his subordinates have been slain, but out of nowhere the king locks onto Mukuda, forcing him to flee. With Mukuda attempting to take down the creature with his stone bullets, he realizes that the projectiles simply deflect off the king's tough exterior, panicking as he can only flee from the king's axe swings. To make things worse, Fel mentions how his barrier won't completely protect Mukuda, forcing Mukuda to steal his resolve as he conjures a far greater stone bullet than the rest, managing to strike the king directly in the head. With the Kobold King's head recoiling, it suddenly recovers, opting to use its claws to attack Mukuda, but before Mukuda can retaliate, he suddenly feels dizzy, having exhausted his mana. Left wide open, Mukuda is once again saved by Fel's barrier, realizing that Fel was lying to force Mukuda to grow. With the Kobold King fixated on breaching Fel's barrier, Sway fires off a beam of acid, instantly disintegrating the creature. But before Mukuda faints from fatigue, he notices Sway glowing. Back outside, Mukuda awakens from his slumber, reassuring Sway that he's fine, but strangely enough, Sway can now communicate with him. Mukuda pulls Sway in for a hug, checking her stats only to see that she's evolved from a baby slime to a slime, explaining why Sway was glowing earlier. To top things off, Sway is already level 7 after her levels reset. As for Mukuda, he is officially level 7 with Earth Magic as a new skill, but sadly he is still weaker than Sway. Mukuda hears that Fel left a while ago, but in the meantime Mukuda wonders if Sway is a rare breed for her kind, but right on cue Fel returns. Mukuda realizes Fel went out to hunt and eat since he got hungry. Still annoyed, Fel lied to him about his barrier breaking, but Mukuda is grateful since Fel pushed him out of his comfort zone. Seeing as everyone is hungry, Mukuda browses the online store to pick up some eggs, fish stock, soy sauce, and rice, only to begin cutting up some onions and rockbird. Next, Mukuda simmers the ingredients in a broth base, only to top everything off with some eggs, adding the mixture to some rice to reveal a rice bowl. As our trio devour the well-earned meal, they choose to rest up afterwards, but Mukuda suddenly bursts out laughing hearing Sway call Fel her uncle. Since Sway is only 14 days old and Fel is 1,000 years old, it makes sense, but feeling embarrassed, Fel roars, demanding to be addressed simply as Fel. Scared, Sway begins to shiver and cry, leaping into Mukuda's arms as he teases Fel for being mean. Giving in, Fel permits only Sway to address him as uncle, exciting Sway as it seems they've all grown closer. Entering into a domain filled with orthros and griffins, Fel declares they'll be charging right through instead of going around to save on time. But Mukuda says those monsters are considered boss-level threats. Fel reminds Mukuda that he can't be defeated, first running through the orthros territory, but within mere seconds our gang are swarmed by a pack of orthros. Although most of the orthros can recognize that Fel is stronger than them, a lone younger orthros chooses to challenge Fel, prompting Mukuda and Sway to run for cover. As the young orthros rushes Fel simply waves his paw, shooting a burst of wind magic that shreds the attacker. Fel gives the other orthros a chance to flee, all whilst Fel explains that technique he just used, but Mukuda is too busy admiring how cute Sway is for wanting to learn Fel's technique. At night, the gang set up camp, but when Mukuda heads to retrieve some water, he flinches at everything, fearing something may attack him. Fel says their earlier confrontation should have warned any attackers to stay away, and seeing as everyone is getting hungry, Mukuda heads to prepare the stoves. Mukuda asks Fel how much longer it'll take to arrive at their destination, shocked that they're only halfway and it'll probably take another 3 weeks to reach their end goal. Mukuda fears they'll run out of meat soon, choosing to retrieve some black serpent meat alongside a variety of other ingredients. Mukuda starts by trimming the flesh off the bone, only to dice up the serpent meat as if it were chicken. Mukuda then starts tossing the serpent meat with some seasoning and chili sauces, ultimately serving up some chili black serpent, relieved to see the serpent taste fine. With both Sway and Fel impatient, Mukuda rushes to feed his starving familiars, suddenly realizing that there are only scraps left over, as Mukuda settle for a sandwich filled with the leftover chili serpent. The next day, the gang enter into Griffin territory, but make a pit stop when Fel detects some rare healing mushrooms nearby. When eaten, the mushrooms can heal wounds or broken bones, and seeing as there is quite a lot of mushrooms present, Mukuda starts collecting them while Sway devours some. After a while, Sway is seen glowing again, but although Sway seems fine, Mukuda checks her stats to make sure. Surprisingly, Sway has learnt the skill of healing potion creation. A feature Fel suspects is due to Sway eating healing mushrooms, as slimes tend to evolve based on what it eats. Mukuda praises Sway for learning such a useful skill, asking Sway to try it out only to watch Sway oozing out a strange liquid. As Mukuda catches the liquid in a bottle, he inspects the substance only to see it is a high-quality liquid that can heal things from impending death. With Sway showing off other types of healing potions it can create, Fel admits that he has never seen such an intelligent and skilled slime like Sway before, something Mukuda celebrates as he hit the jackpot with Sway. In the next 3 days, the gang finally encounter their first griffin, but as the creature flies towards the gang, it suddenly greets Fel with its head hung low. The griffin begs Fel to duel it, as it wants to become head of its pack, and seeing as the griffin is willing to give its life to prove itself, Fel accepts the duel. Off to the side, Mukuda asks that Fel not slay the griffin, but as the duel starts, the griffin leads with several slashes that Fel evades. Fel chooses to kick the griffin away, but the griffin simply sends out several feather projectiles, forcing Fel to dodge, all whilst creating a smoke screen in favor of the griffin. The griffin uses the smoke screen to dive in and out for attacks on Fel, but getting a little annoyed, Fel unleashes a tornado that clears the smoke, all whilst capturing the griffin in the eye of the storm. Mukuda screams for Fel to let the griffin live, forcing Fel to release the griffin from the tornado, but the griffin is too beaten up to move. Quickly, Mukuda and Sway heal the griffin with Sway's healing liquid, but seeing the griffin depressed, Mukuda points out that the griffin was able to land a hit onto Fel. Surprised it was able to harm the legendary Fenrir, the griffin roars, attracting its kind only to declare that it has become leader of its pack thanks to Fel. Before the griffin leads with its pack, it hands Mukuda one of its feathers, promising to not intervene with the gang moving forward. That night, Mukuda thanks Fel for clearing things up with the griffin, reasoning that he should use the rest of their meat to reward Fel. Mukuda opts to batter and season the remainder of their orc meat, deep frying it only to serve it beside some cabbage and sauce, a meal both Fel and Sway gladly devour. With Mukuda whipping up second for the gang, he is reminded by Fel to send offerings to Ninrir, cutting to a few days later where the gang have finally emerged from the forest. Mukuda celebrates a month and a half worth of traveling, checking the map to see that they're close to the kingdom of Leonhardt, and seeing as they're basically out of meat, the gang sprint to search for any man-made roads. Off in the distance, Mukuda spots a caravan being attacked by bandits, ordering Fel to save them in exchange for a luxury meal later. Enticed by the offer, Fel rushes towards the caravan, all whilst we see Lars desperately fending off the bandits, all whilst Lambert is ordered to remain hiding in the caravan. Right on cue, Fel leaps into the air, drawing everyone's attention as he orders the bandits to freeze and relinquish their weapons. Overwhelmed by Fel's presence, the bandits give in, allowing the bandits to be tied up safely. Lambert introduces himself as the owner of the caravan, and Lars is the leader of the Phoenix Adventure Party that had been employed to escort Lambert, all grateful to Mukuda for saving them. Lambert mentions how they're heading to the city of Carolina, the northwestern city in the kingdom of Leonhardt, and seeing as it's convenient for them as well, Mokuda agrees to accompany everyone to the kingdom of Leonhardt. Traveling all day, Mokuda ends up hearing rumors from the guards that Fell is either a great wolf or a Fenrir, and that the rumors spread fast due to letters being exchanged via a magic teleportation tool. Mokuda ends up feeling bad for Fell since most nobles want to tame and use Fell for their own benefit. And to make things worse, Mokuda himself has a rare item box, appraisal skill, and even the online grocery skill, all things that will cause a massive stir if leaked. That night, everyone decides to set up camp for the night, but Fell reminds Mokuda he promised to serve him a luxury meal, forcing our trio to separate from the main group as he prepares to cook up some meat for everyone. Mokuda reports that only meat scraps are left, but wanting to make the most of the remaining meat, Mokuda ends up dicing up and battering the remaining meat only to deep fry them. Mokuda also uses up the sauces to season them, pleasing Sway as she gobbles down the meal. As for Fell, he can't help but devour the meat before him. As Mokuda continues to serve batch after batch, the scent from his cooking ultimately reaches the other men, drawing them towards his mini hideout as he's forced to serve them food as well. Now with the men joining in, Mokuda works overtime to please everyone, unable to save any for himself. Grateful for the meal, Lars and his men promise to protect Mokuda whilst they rest, only to glare at the bandits, ordering them to behave. When the bandits refuse to be quiet, Mokuda speaks up, reminding the bandits that Fell will rip them to shreds if they disrupt their beauty sleep. The next day, Mokuda finally arrives at Carolina, the 5th largest city in Leonhardt, a place where Lambert's family have been leather merchants for generations. Seeing as Lars is heading to the guild to report the bandits they captured, Mokuda promises to visit Lambert's store later, first accompanying Lars to the town's guild. Surprisingly, Mokuda learns that his G-rank license had been revoked since he hasn't accepted a quest for over a month, learning from Annette that most G-ranks try getting to F rank as soon as possible. That way he'll have a 3-month grace period between quests. Seeing as he won't make the same mistake twice, Mokuda asks to re-register his guild license, this time reporting that Sway is a new familiar he wants to register, but this only makes other adventurers mock him for taming a slime. Afterwards, Mokuda asks where he can submit the monsters he's collected, only for Lars to ask if he and his men can watch, curious as to what monsters Fell had slain. Seeing the massive monster pile, Lars and his men are speechless, but Mokuda continues to pile up the corpses, stopping just before he adds the Chimera corpse. Johan the Butcher is impressed to be given the chance to carve up so many corpses, but Mokuda asks if it's fine to have his monsters butcher in places other than the guild, but Johan advises against it since non-licensed butchers are sketchy. In mere moments, Johan perfectly extracts a portion of the red serpent's delicate skin, making Mokuda and Fell crave the taste of the serpent's meat. Lars suddenly realizes something, asking what meats were served to them last night. But upon hearing that Mokuda had served them A-rank and B-rank monsters, Lars and his men immediately apologize for stuffing themselves with such rare monster meat. Mokuda is surprised at first, but reassures the men it was fine, something Lars can't accept as he promises to assist Mokuda if anything arises in the future. Checking into the Griffin in that night, Mokuda reasons that he should reach F rank whilst he's in town, plus he needs the guild's butcher to help extract the meat for their adventures. Before Mokuda heads to sleep, Ninrir's voice reminds Mokuda to complete his weekly offerings, and seeing as there is a pudding and jelly sale in his online store, Mokuda offers up a variety of sweets to the goddess. The next morning, Mokuda checks out the quest board, learning that basic escort jobs are worth 1 point, herb gathering is worth 2 points, and goblin hunting will garner 3 points. Seeing as he needs 100 points to rank up, Mokuda estimates that it may take around 2 to 3 months, but Fell orders Mokuda to take all the goblin slaying quests to speed things up. As both boys argue using their telepathy, Fell gets an idea, managing to convince Sway to agree to hunt down some goblins, ultimately convincing Mokuda to take on a goblin hunting quest. Heading eastwards, the quest rewards 5 goblin kills with 3 silver coins and 3 points. a reasonable offer for hunting goblins. After a few minutes of searching, our trio stumble onto 3 goblins, but in mere moments, Sui shoots them down with her acid spit. Mukuta is thrown off when the quest requires Mukuta to slice off a goblin's ear as proof of a successful hunt, traumatizing Mukuta as he screams whilst harvesting the ears. Having made too much noise, another army of goblins approaches our trio, but Sui gets to work dispatching them one by one. Not satisfied, both Sui and Fel drag Mukuta toward the nearby goblin settlement, ultimately managing to rack up quite a few hundred goblin corpses. Moving on to harvesting the goblin ears, Mukuta wonders what they'll do with the remainder of the goblin bodies, fearing that it may attract other monsters or even create a dungeon itself. Fel reckons they should leave the corpses be and let nature do its magic, but Mukuta refuses, asking if Sui herself could melt down the bodies. Happily obliging, Sui ends up growing massively in size after cleaning up a fraction of the corpses, and when Mukuta checks Sui's stats, Mukuta sees that Sui has evolved into a big slime. Having gained the skill to proliferate, Sui shows off her skill to change size at will, splitting her body apart into smaller Suis only to begin dissolving the remainder of the goblin corpses. Mukuta is amazed by how overpowered Sui has gotten, but seeing as it's almost lunchtime, Mukuta declares they'll be having bread today. Changing things up, Mukuta purchases a variety of breads with savory fillings, intriguing Sui as she discovers different meats within each bread. As Fel tucks into the meal, Mukuta indulges in some coffee to wake himself up, a little disappointed that his plan to rank up slowly has been ruined, as the goblins they racked up in a single day have garnered him enough points to reach rank F already. Returning to the guild, Mukuta submits the horde of goblin ears he had collected, but this ends up causing a stir at the guild, stressing Mukuta out when the guild master himself asks to speak with Mukuta. Guided by a net out back, Willem the guild master greets Mukuta, grateful for Mukuta for taking out the goblin settlement near their town. Mukuta is shocked that Willem has deduced that Fel is indeed a Fenrir, but more importantly, Willem reads a message from the royal palace, informing Mukuta that the royals and nobles are aware of our trio's presence in their town, and that they'll leave Mukuta alone. Mukuta celebrates a happy accident, suddenly hearing that Willem is willing to promote Mukuta to a C rank, but Willem would like Mukuta to do him a couple favors. Mukuta fears that Willem has some devious quest lined up for him, but Willem corrects Mukuta, uttering that he actually needs Fel to take on some A rank and S rank quests for him. With Fel agreeing, Willem says there are a few quests that have been lying dormant for ages. Plus, Willem will ensure no one gets in Mukuta's way when taking on the quest. Seeing as it's the perfect time, Mukuta finally shows Willem and Johan the Chimera and Ortho's corpses he had been keeping secret, reasoning that the 2 men would be trustworthy enough to deal with them. But Willem fears that he won't have enough money to pay for such valuable monster corpses. The men settle for butchering up the Blue Orc, an S-rank monster, and an Orc King, another borderline S-rank creature, both powerful beings that Fel was easily able to slay. Sui gets motivated to hunt down powerful monsters just like Fel, all whilst Willem tells Mukuta to come back once Johan finishes butchering up the monsters. Plus, he'll give Mukuta his C-rank license tomorrow as well. That night, Mukuta reasons they should switch things up from the normal fried food, opting to cook a meal with vegetables. Mukuta first boils some rock bird, only to have Sui help him shred the bird, only to finish the first meal by adding some sauce to the bird and vegetables. Next, Mukuta gets started on stir-frying a portion of the rock bird with some vegetables, ultimately serving up the dishes to Fel and Sui, all whilst indulging in a beer himself. Mukuta chooses to combine the dishes with bread, all dusting off the dishes as Mukuta voices how proud he is that Sui wasn't picky about what she was served. Noticing Fel cramped in his sleeping space, Mukuta offers to lay down a futon to help Fel sleep, only for everyone to finally head to bed. The next day, Mukuta heads to the guild to collect his guild license, amazed that a C-rank card is silver and that C-rank adventurers only need to complete a quest every 6 months. Finally, Willem shows off the payout Mukuta will be receiving for his monster corpses, first starting with 461 gold coins for the initial monster corpses with the red serpent. Next is 1,415 gold coins for the ogres in the second pile, and finally is the payment for clearing up the goblins and their settlement, totaling a final payout of 1,946 gold coins. Willem admits it's the biggest amount of money they've paid a single adventurer. Plus, Makuta knows he still has leftover fund for his other adventures, fearing that his 2,000 plus gold coins will draw in other attackers. Willem does remind Makuta that he still needs to take on 2 quests to keep up his end of the bargain, starting with hunting down a metal lizard along with a pack of bloody hornbulls. Willem asks that Makuta hunt the metal lizard first, as their nest is meant to be at the foot of the Pascal Mountain and will take a 2-day carriage ride to get there. The blue lizard definitely has a favorite food, but there are no documents on what it may be. Plus, the lizard is immune to most physical attacks due to its tough metal exterior. Makuta secretly utters that Fel had hunted one in the past, but moving on, Willem says the pack of bloody hornbulls are west of their location and are a current issue for newbie adventurers. Willem warns against the bull's dangerous pack size, but Fel can only think about all the beef they can eat, exciting the trio as the guild is willing to pay for half of the bulls they slay. Since they'll depart tomorrow, Makuta heads to visit Lambert, asking to purchase a new bag. Lambert gladly shows Makuta a few bags made from different animals at different price points. But Makuta says Sway will be the final decider, seeing as she'll be carried around in it. Surprised to see Sway pick out the cheapest bag made of leather. Browsing around the store, Makuta takes note of a belt that can store his sword, but it costs 6 gold coins. Next, Makuta spots a fancy coin purse for a single coin, only to be drawn to new boots as well. Lambert says Makuta's total will be 11 gold coins, but seeing as Makuta saved his life and fed them expensive food, Lambert is willing to give Makuta the items for free. Before Makuta departs, Lambert asks if Makuta has any red serpent skin left, but Makuta apologizes since he sold everything to the guild. As Makuta promises to sell some of his monster droppings to Lambert next time, they part ways, only for Fel to request some snake for dinner. Seeing as they have a big day tomorrow, Makuta agrees to fulfill Fel's wish, first battering up some chunks of serpent meat only to double deep fry them. Instantly, Fel and Sway swoop in and devour the meal. And seeing as they recently restocked on food, Makuta is more than happy to feed them until they're stuffed. Once Fel and Sway are satisfied, Makuta reasons he should fry up some extra and store them for later, ending the night with a beer to accompany his meal, all while Sway and Fel knock out for the night. Heading towards the mountain where the metal lizards reside the next day, Makuta tries guiding Fel, but relying on his keen senses, Fel darts towards a cave, having detected a lizard resting inside. Slowly descending the cave, the gang notices a metal lizard off in the distance, but it seems to be glowing. Makuta appraises the lizard to be a mithril lizard, suspecting it mutated after devouring the nearby mithril ore, and seeing as there are no other lizards nearby, Fel will have to engage it. Fel explains that mithril is quite durable and highly resistant to magic, worrying Makuta, but in an instant Fel's lightning spell fries the lizard, smirking as he reminds Makuta that he is a legendary Fenrir. As Makuta stores away the lizard's corpse, he reasons he should gather some mithril for himself, wondering if he could craft a blade or some armor. Fel gets annoyed, declaring that Makuta won't need any mithril in his arsenal, as his barrier is stronger than mithril and his attacks are far more efficient than any mithril blade. And seeing as Fel is still energetic, they all rush to take on the bull quest. After a while of traveling, our trio stand before the horde of bulls, prompting Makuta to wait atop a hill whilst Fel deals with the monsters. Surprisingly, Sway herself wants to hunt down monsters as well, quickly meeting up with Fel as they use the tall grass to their advantage, ultimately pouncing and massacring the nearby bulls. Makuta is completely horrified at how strong his familiars are, but nonetheless gets started with collecting the bulls' corpses, grateful to Sway and Fel for helping with transferring them into his item box. For a quick lunch, the gang munch on some sandwiches stuffed with orc and rockbird, all whilst Makuta flushes down the meal with some cola. Intrigued, Sway asks to taste the carbonated beverage, piquing Fel's interest as well, only for everyone to wrap up lunch. As the sun begins to set, Mukuta shows off the mithril lizard Fel has hunted, shocking Johan and Willem as the last sighting of a mithril lizard was 400 years ago, plus the discovery of a mithril vein is the fourth of its kind. Mukuta realizes how catastrophic his findings are, especially since the mithril lizard along with the discovery of the mithril vein will have to be reported to the city lord and the king, but luckily Mukuta will get paid around 5,000 gold for a job well done. Mukuta panics at the amount of money he'll be holding, but Willem says they need to gather the funds first, asking Mukuta to keep everything discussed a secret for now. To make things worse, Mukuta reveals they completed the bull's quest as well, wrapping up the day as they leave the guild, stressed about all the attention he'll get if people find out what Fel is capable of. Regardless, Mukuta chooses to treat the gang with their newly harvested beef, starting off by slicing up several steaks only to season and sear them carefully. Serving up the first round of steaks, the gang immediately shiver at the plump and savory beef steaks, prompting Mukuta to serve up another round, but this time alongside some garlic steak sauce. As our trio eat till their heart's content, Mukuta is seen doing the dishes, flattered by Fel, who says he will only eat things that Mukuta cooks him moving forward. Mukuta is grateful to Fel and Sway for making his life easy, but as he heads to bed that night, he quickly remembers to offer up some sweets to Ninrir, even adding a few extras since Ninri personally requested specific sweets. As Mukuta's offering is sent to Ninrir, a few other voices can suddenly be heard in his head, revealed to be Agni, Kisharl, and Rusalka, fellow goddesses that are jealous of the tasty treats Ninrir has been receiving. Ninrir says she is simply accepting offerings after blessing Mukuta, but when the other girls see that Ninrir had only given Mukuta a minor blessing, they offer to bless Mukuta in exchange for sweet offerings as well. Kisharl says she is the goddess of earth whilst Agni is the goddess of fire, both elemental affinities that Mukuta currently possess, and seeing as the goddess of creation may scold the girls for giving out to many blessings, they'll simply give Mukuta minor blessings like Ninrir. Mukuta secretly wonders if he could deny such offers, especially since it's never been heard of for someone to have more than one blessing. But having heard enough of Mukuta's whining, Agni and Kisharl both bless Mukuta regardless. With the girls excited to receive their offerings, we see off to the side Rusalka, the water goddess, begin to cry, not wanting to be left out. But she also doesn't want to bless Mukuta, seeing as he doesn't have an affinity for water magic. As Mukuta racks his brain to cheer everyone up, he suddenly notices Sway checking on him, swiftly asking for Rusalka to give her blessing to Sway, a perfect candidate. Happily obliging, Rusalka ends up fully blessing Sway, all suddenly demanding to be given their offerings now. Seeing as he has to keep up his end of the bargain, Mukuta purchases a box full of sweets, sending the offering up to the goddess only to collapse into his bed exhausted. Mukuta chooses to check his stats, amazed at how stacked they are, reasoning that Sway and himself should try out their new powers. Heading into a forest the next day, Mukuta confirms that his fire and earth magic have been severely boosted, and it seems he isn't as fatigued after casting a decent amount of spells. Up next, Sway tries out her new powers, dazzling everyone when she manages to conjure a massive water ball on her first go, only to decimate a nearby tree. To top things off, Sway's slashing attacks easily shred several trees at once, prompting Mukuta to instruct Sway to only attack monsters with her new powers. When Fel asks to spar Sway, Mukuta immediately forbids such a thing. Instead, Mukuta tries out his new rock wall skill, all whilst Fel heads off to do some hunting. When Fel returns with a black serpent corpse, Mukuta shows off a new house he made with his earth magic, but sadly Fel and Sway are more fixated on dinner. Waking up early the next day, the gang admit the house helped, only for Mukuta to declare they'll be delivering the serpent Fel hunted to Lambert. Back in town, Mukuta visits Johan, who shows off the remainder of the bull meat, all whilst handing Mukuta the remainder of his pay for the bulls. Johan reports that Willem is out speaking to the lord of the city about the mithril lizard, but in the meantime, Mukuta asks to sell the black serpent, but he'll be keeping the flesh and skin. Back at the inn, Mukuta shows off a new meat grinder he had purchased online, showing off the device to be able to mince up the bull meat. adding in some minced orc general meat as well. Mukuta gets to work frying some onions only to combine the meats, seasonings, and various other ingredients, ultimately shaping the mixture into patties with Sui's help. Choosing to store some in his item box for later, only to begin frying up the patties, serving them up alongside some hamburger sauce. With a single bite, our trio stuffed their faces with the juicy patties, plus Mukuta reveals he had added cheese in some of the patties. Later that day, Mukuta is annoyed at the soap bar he's been given since it doesn't produce any bubbles, choosing to purchase some from his online stores along with other bathroom amenities. Mukuta reasons it should be a suitable gift as well when they visit Lambert, but to make things less suspicious, Mukuta transfers over the liquids into more bland containers. Off to the side, Sui enjoys soaking in water, making Mukuta crave taking a bath in this new world. That night, Mukuta presents the black serpent skin he obtained to Lambert, something Lambert swipes up for 50 gold. Moving on, Mukuta reveals he is also a merchant guild member, asking for Lambert's advice on the bathroom products he bought. At first glance, Lambert is impressed by the scent the soap is giving off, but as Mukuta mindlessly rambles on about the cleaning products he is presenting to Lambert, he suddenly stops himself wondering if he said too much. Luckily, Lambert reveals that he had been looking for an anniversary gift to give his wife, and since his wife loves to take baths, Mukuta's items will be the perfect gift. Hearing that Lambert has a bathtub, Mukuta asks to see it for himself, amazed to see the finely crafted tub as Lambert reveals it cost a few hundred gold to create altogether. Seeing Mukuta fixated on his bathtub, Lambert says he'll introduce Mukuta to a shop that sells bath, prompting Mukuta to leave behind one of each amenity for Lambert to try out himself before he officially gifts them to his wife. The next day, Mukuta returns to see how Lambert likes the products, but surprisingly Lambert's wife, Marie, is present. Marie reveals that Lambert looks stunning and smelt amazing after bathing last night, and when Marie tried out the product herself, she immediately knew such products would be a hit. Since Mukuta doesn't have a store of his own, Marie and Lambert offered to help sell the bathroom amenities Mukuta gave to them, but Mukuta is quite hesitant. As Mukuta returns to the others, he reports that Lambert will be selling his bottled bathroom amenities moving forwards, and seeing as Willem seems to be back, Mukuta has fell and Sui wait outside whilst he heads into the guild. Upon entering into Willem's office, Mukuta is dazzled by the stacks of gold Willem was able to fetch for the mithril lizard and mithril vein, totaling 5,800 gold coins. Before Mukuta can think about the bathtub he can purchase with such a fortune, Annette enters the room, reporting that a swarm of wyverns have attacked several low-ranking hunters near the Western Plains. Luckily, the hunters that were attacked have survived, but most of them are on the brink of death. Entering into the main room of the guild, Mukuta notices multiple adventurers beaten up and bruised, and seeing as there aren't enough healing potions for everyone, Mukuta offers up some of his high-quality healing potions. Upon applying them to the injured, the potions instantly cleanse and heal all wounds, giving Willem the chance to make an emergency announcement, asking for all C rank and above adventurers to slay the wyverns before they attack their town. As Willem's words rally together the surrounding adventurers, Fell's voice suddenly rings throughout the room, uttering that Fell himself will take out the wyverns. Willem admits that it would be much appreciated, promising to pay Mukuta handsomely if Fell succeeds, but Fell only cares about devouring the wyvern flesh. Departing immediately, Fell escorts our gang through some grassy terrain, only to halt when they all spot wyverns circling them from above. Mukuta appraises the wyverns to be creatures that hunt in packs and have poisonous stingers for their tails, but Fell is not one bit afraid, instead using the opportunity to teach Sui how to fight aerial monsters. With Mukuta staying behind, Sui rides Fell in a battle, only for Fell to be forced to evade the wyverns diving towards them. Fell instructs Sui to target the wyvern's head or wings, but on her first go, Sui only manages to land a hit on a wyvern's wings, sending it plummeting from the skies. Fell still congratulates Sui for landing a hit on a wyvern, instantly decapitating the lone wyvern, only for Sui and Fell to lock onto the other wyverns swarming them. Although Mukuta is far away, he still feels the impact from Fel and Sway's battle. But having gotten too distracted, a lone wyvern sneaks up on Makuta. As the wyvern attacks with its tail, Makuta is once again protected by Fel's barrier. But before the wyvern can attack Makuta again, Sway appears, absorbing and blowing the creature away. Right on cue, Fel monstrously appears behind the wyvern, instantly shredding the creature only to clean up the rest not too long after. Seeing as they've earned their lunch, Makuta heads to retrieve the leftover patties he had prepared earlier, declaring that he'll be frying the patties to create a different dish. With a light coating of breadcrumbs, Makuta presents a stack of crispy and juicy deep-fried patties, all enjoying their lunch under the gorgeous blue sky and luscious fields, all whilst Willem and the other guild members await our hero's return. As night falls, our trio finally return to the guild, reporting that all the wyverns have been eliminated. The adventurers in the guild immediately begin to celebrate, all whilst Willem utters that half of their adventurers would have been wiped out if it weren't for Fel. Funnily enough, Fel utters that they took so long because they had lunch afterwards. Makuta starts his report by declaring that they collected 13 wyverns in total, and that most of them are intact, so the guild can buy the corpses, but Makuta wants the wyvern's flesh. Willem says since the guild is low on funds, they'll butcher the wyverns and only purchase half of them, cutting to later that night where Makuta gets ready for bed. Realizing that he needs to offer up some sweets to the goddess, Makuta suddenly gets contacted by Agni, who demand her offerings, only for Ninrir to privately speak with Makuta, asking for a larger portion than the others. Kishar, on the other hand, asks to try out the soap and shampoo Makuta showed to Lambert, only for Rusalka to request similar meals to the ones Makuta makes for Fel and Sway. Annoyed, Makuta reminds the goddesses that their secret messages will be exposed once he sends everything to the goddesses, infuriating Agni as she demands to be sent booze to make things fair. With our trio heading through town the next day, Makuta can't help but hear others admiring them from afar. But first things first, Makuta visits a Lario company to check out their bathtubs. The store clerk asks if Makuta is considering buying a house, starting off by showing a brown tub for 300 gold, only to move on to a little more expensive one that can regulate its temperature better. Finally, the store clerk shows off a white tub that is the most popular yet expensive one, but seeing as he doesn't care for the color of the tub, Makuta asks to purchase the green tub. The store clerk is surprised at the quick decision, asking if Makuta needs a payment plan, but Makuta simply pays for the tub in full. After storing it in his item box, Makuta says they'll be leaving town, heading deep into the forest where he can finally make use of the bathtub. In the meantime, Fel runs off to do some hunting, leaving Sway and Makuta to map out a general area for their tub, only for Makuta to erect stone walls to encase them in. Next, Sway is tasked with filling the tub with water, only for Makuta to heat up the water with his fire magic. Taking charge, Makuta starts by scrubbing himself down, only to finally indulge in the steamy goodness that is the warm bath water, remembering to add bath salts to help hydrate his body. After a long bath, Makuta and Sway down a pint of milk each, both wondering where Fel is. Seeing as he has time, Makuta gets started on preparing the wyvern meat, first slicing up some onions only to thinly cut up the wyvern meat. Into a pot, Makuta tosses all the ingredients and brings it up to a boil, only to serve the mixture onto a bed of rice. Makuta finds it strange that Fel has yet to return, so he reasons he should start on another meal that will take up some time. Purchasing some more vegetables and seasoning, Makuta dices up some carrots, onions, and potatoes, only to portion out chunks of wyvern and beef meat. Next, Makuta fries the meat, adding the remaining ingredients alongside some sauces and wine, ultimately creating a wyvern stew. With the sun beginning to set, Sway suddenly detects Fel nearby, but surprisingly Fel has brought the corpse of a dragon he slayed. Makuta is speechless upon hearing that Fel slayed a earth dragon, and seeing as Fel is quite satisfied with his hunt, Makuta reminds Fel that they can't bring the dragon to the guild as it'll be too expensive for them to purchase. More importantly, Fel is able to sniff out the sweet scents of the stews Makuta prepared, but Makuta states they won't be having dinner until Fel cleans himself up. Searching through his online store, Mukuda chooses to pick out some grooming products for pets, only to begin brushing out Fell's fur to untie some knots. Moving on, Mukuda begins splashing Fell with some water to prep him for the shampoo. But seeing as it's taking longer than usual, Mukuda uses Sway as a shower to spray down Fell. Finally, Mukuda and Sway begin scrubbing down Fell with shampoo, rinsing him off only to combine fire and wind magic to dry Fell off. With it now being dinner time, Mukuda first serves up the beef bowls to Fell and Sway, all appreciating the flavors that come with eating wyvern meat with rice, plus the pickled ginger cleanses the palate. Seeing as the wyvern stew will taste better tomorrow, the gang settle for eating the beef bowl today, only for Mukuda to declare that Fell will be taking a bath every once or twice a month to ensure Fell is clean and hygienic. Returning to town, Mukuda shows off the earth dragon Fell slayed, but Willem and Johan are in complete disbelief, both refusing to touch the creature, seeing as every part of the dragon is extremely valuable. Luckily, Willem mentions that the guild master from Dolan is quite knowledgeable on dragons, and seeing as Dolan is close to the sea, the gang get excited. Wrapping up his stay in town, Mukuda makes sure to say his farewells to everyone, receiving a letter meant for the guildmaster at Dolan along with a map Willem had marked to help with Mukuda's travel. The season ends with our trio finally departing for Dolan, but the gang remember to set up camp that night and try the wyvern stew Mukuda had made the previous day, exciting Fell and Sway for what other meals Mukuda has in store for them. In a creepy-looking forest, we see Fell easily electrocuting several venomous tarantulas, but Sway is sad he didn't get to fight. Fell orders for Mukuda to make them a delicious meal since they've been traveling all day. But first things first, Mukuda stores the tarantulas in his item box, and upon checking up on his remaining meat supplies, he states they'll be having gyozas. With everyone excited, Mukuda first opens his online grocery skill and purchases some gyoza wrappers and seasoning, and with the supplies arriving, Mukuda gets to work prepping the ingredients only to combine them all together with the seasoning. Finally, Mukuda begins delicately wrapping each individual gyoza, and with Sway helping, Mukuda finishes his prep work only to move on to frying them. With a pan filled with gyozas, Mukuda makes sure to fry the puffy pastries with a flour water mixture, and by topping off the dish with some soy sauce, Mukuda proudly shows off his soy sauce gyoza dish. Within mere seconds, Fell gobbles down the plate, mesmerized by the intricate meat and sauces accompanying the crispy texture. And as both Sway and Fell devour Mukuda's cooking, we pan out to see a creature spying on them. After Mukuda has finished feeding Sway and Fell, Mukuda himself begins to dig in, but suddenly a small red dragon darts towards Mukuda only to cling onto his face. Immediately, Fell recognizes the creature to be a pixie dragon, a rare breed of small dragons. But funnily enough, the dragon seems to be fixated on Mukuda's gyozas. Upon feeding the creature a gyoza, Mukuda can't help but adore the creature gobbling down his cooking, and when Mukuda hands the creature the rest of his plate, Fell warns Mukuda that the small dragon is actually a powerful magical creature. When the dragon finishes up its meal, it immediately darts towards Mukuda's head only to emit a bright light, and before Mukuda knows that the dragon has become Mukuda's familiar. Strangely, Mukuda can now speak with the dragon, and with Sway excited by their new friend, both Fell and the dragon seem to get along quite well as they're curious as to what other foods Mukuda will whip up for them. Before the gang departs, the dragon reminds Mukuda to give it a name, and seeing how the dragon is quite small, Mukuda settles on the name Dora. Dora is immediately annoyed at the childlike name, especially since it's been alive for more than 100 years. But nothing can be done now, as Dora will be part of their party moving forward. Cutting over to the city of Spinning Krell, we see Mukuda registering Dora as his familiar at the Adventurers Guild, but immediately Guildmaster Rodolfo comes to greet Mukuda. Rodolfo is amazed at the pixie dragon Mukuda had tamed, giggling since someone he knows would have killed to see Dora, but needing Mukuda to complete a special mission. Rodolfo asks if Mukuda can investigate a nearby forest. Rodolfo says there have been lots of monsters in the nearby forest as of lately, and they must resolve the issue fast as the town tend to harvest the webbing from the insects in the forest for their goods. Plus, Dora reassures Mukuda that the spiders and centipedes they face will be no issue for him. as Makuta and his party chat telepathically. Makuta suddenly remembers the tarantulas they caught, and when he shows Rodolfo, Rodolfo is completely speechless, as the tarantulas would have normally taken an entire party to trim down before they reproduce. Thanking the gang, Rodolfo says the tarantula's shells and webbing are very expensive, but most importantly, Makuta's familiars are intrigued to taste the monster's plump flesh. Curious as well, Makuta agrees to sell off the tarantulas but asks for their meat to be left for them, leading the gang to stroll through town as the tarantulas are butchered. Stopping by a clothing store, Makuta sees a fresh new shirt is worth a gold coin and 5 silver coins, an absurd price, but it makes sense for the material, especially since it's the best in town. Getting pumped up, Makuta cries that he'll shop for some new things whilst he is in town, and after a long day of shopping, the gang return to the guild. Meeting up with Rodolfo, we see the legs of the tarantulas resembling some gorgeous crab legs, and with a single bite of the plum steamed meat, Makuta becomes blown away by the succulent flavors. Getting an idea, Makuta heads into the forest and whips up some fried rice, salad, an omelet, and some spring rolls with the meat, and with the gang celebrating Dora's admission into their party, they all begin to dig into the meal. Bite after bite, the refreshing and savory flavors all intermingle with each other, and before Makuta forgets, he chooses to grill some of the tarantula legs, just like he would crab legs. Immediately, the others swarm Makuta's grill, forcing Makuta to share them. In the middle of the meal, Dora reveals that he had smelled Makuta's cooking when he was in the city of Carolina, but this means that the sudden influx of monsters in the nearby forest must have been Dora's existence, as the monsters were simply trying to scare Dora away. Regardless, the gang wrap up their meal, and as we cut to later that night, Makuta and Sway are seen cooling off in a hot steam bath. Settling in for the night, Makuta wonders if he is forgetting something, but as we cut to the next day, Makuta is seen selling the remainder of the tarantula shells from the legs they devoured yesterday. As Makuta hands Rodolfo some leftover meat, he remembers that he still needs someone to help process the earth dragon Fell hunted down, prompting Makuta to ask if Rodolfo knows anyone in Dolan that can help process the earth dragon corpse. Caught off guard, Rodolfo cries that Makuta can buy an entire kingdom with the dragon corpse. So Rodolfo chooses to hand Makuta a piece of paper asking for Elland, the guild master that resides in the dungeon city of Dolan, and with the men parting ways, Makuta continues his travels. Not before long, the gang lay their eyes on Dolan, the dungeon city, and as Fell zips the gang towards the city's gates, they all agree to line up before they can enter the city's walls. Immediately, the towering statue of Fell and the unique flying Dora catches the attention of the city's guards, and with Makuta reassuring everyone that he is a registered adventurer and merchant, we suddenly see Elrond the Guildmaster appear to greet Makuta. Immediately, Elrond's gaze is fixated on Dora, and as Elrond invites our gang inside, he offers up a fancy mana-imbued branch for Dora to sit on, but Dora could care less as he lays beside Makuta on the couch. Fascinated, Elrond is seen noting down Dora's behavior, and while serving Makuta some tea, Elrond tries feeding Dora some flower nectar, but Dora seems disgusted by the drink. Creepily, Elrond jots down Dora's every move, and having learned about Makuta needing help with butchering an earth dragon, Elrond excitedly offers to process the earth dragon immediately. Stepping outside, Elrond is scolded by Ugger, who reminds Elrond he has a merchant guild's meeting this afternoon, leading Elrond to suit up and begin preparations to harvest the dragon. Elrond still remembers back 274 years ago to when he was a B-rank adventurer that was not allowed to process a slain dragon in the past, and after Elrond became an S-rank, he despaired since there was never another dragon slain. Whilst Elrond continues on about his backstory, Makuta swiftly pulls out the earth dragon corpse, and upon laying it in front of Elrond, Elrond can't help but begin inspecting the magnificent creature's body. Whilst Elrond begins measuring each and every part of the earth dragon, he asks what Dora tends to eat, and upon hearing that Makuta usually feeds his familiars meats and vegetables, Elrond can't help but be shocked. Elrond says normally Fenrirs eat meats while slimes eat anything, as for pixie dragons they are meant to eat high mana foods, something Dora says he has never done before as he prefers meat. Curious, Elrond asks why Makuta and Dora are staring at each other. But upon hearing that Makuta is telepathically communicating with Dora, Elrond cries that he must know how Makuta is doing this. Luckily, Ugger steps in and stops Elrond from scaring Makuta away, but this annoys Fel as he orders Elrond to hurry up and extract the dragon meat. Freaked out, Elrond hears the Makuta and the gang only want to taste the Earth Dragon's flesh, and with the gang agreeing to share some of the meat with Elrond, we see Makuta booking an inn to stay at. Outside, the entire gang seems exhausted as Elrond had spent most of their time together questioning them on the knowledge and encounters with other dragons, and seeing as they won't get to taste the Earth Dragon today, Makuta declares they'll stuff themselves with food from the online grocery. With Dora intrigued by the online store, we see Makuta opt for some marinated meat, plus he purchases an Iron Genghis-Khan pot. The gang asks what the pot will be used for, but Makuta simply answers by heating up the pot and placing vegetables and meat onto the pot, and to top things off, Makuta douses the meal in some sauce before serving up the dish. Having served up some lamb and mutton, the party digs and only to praise the dish's tender and rich textures, and as the gang stuff their faces, they ultimately ask for seconds. To wrap up the meal, Makuta unveils a box of sweets, and by unwrapping one of the sweets and feeding it to Sway, Sway immediately jumps at the delectable treats. As the gang spend the rest of the night sharing the desserts, we see Makuta exhausted the next day as his familiars were up all night. Greeting Ugger, Makuta asks how Elrond is doing, and funnily enough, Elrond announces that he had spent the entire night measuring and inspecting the Earth Dragon's body. Finally beginning to harvest the dragon, Elrond says he'll need to drain the blood from the creature, leading Elrond to take out a fancy blue knife made out of mithril. With perfect confidence, Elrond runs the blade along the dragon's thick exterior, but suddenly the blade snaps in two, a horrific sight as the mithril blade was the sharpest weapon the guild had. Realizing that they won't be able to eat the dragon, Fel can't help but slump to the floor, despairing at the situation. And seeing as the guild requires more mithril, Fel jumps up only to declare he'll fetch some mithril for them. Makuta stops the feisty Fel, as it seems Elrond is too tired to use the mithril even if they obtained it today. But Fel declares he'll gather some mithril or ahead of time, something Makuta can't allow as his three familiars entering the dungeon and causing chaos would draw too much attention to them. To defuse the situation, Makuta offers to cook everyone a meal, only to whip out some ingredients. First, Makuta stir-fries some orc meat alongside some vegetables, and by using up any remaining sauce they had left over from last night, along with topping off the dish with some garlic and sesame oil, Makuta presents an orc kimchi bowl on a bed of rice. As a bonus, Makuta cracks a raw egg on top of the bowl, and having waited long enough, the gang stuff their faces with the creamy meal, but Makuta fears he won't be able to stop his familiars from rampaging if the harvesting of the Earth Dragon is delayed further. At the same time, we see Ninrir and the other goddesses annoyed that Makuta has yet to deliver them their monthly care packages, but from the corner of their eyes, the girls quiver upon seeing two other gods asking what they're doing. Switching over to Makuta, he is seen finally checking on the goddesses, but immediately Hephaestus, the god of blacksmithing, and Vahong, the god of war, greets Makuta. Seeing this as perfect timing, Makuta asks if Hephaestus could bless his equipment, a deed that could be easily done as Hephaestus agrees to upgrade Makuta's weapon tiers in exchange for an offering of some alcohol. As for Vahong, he is interested in some of the otherworldly items Makuta has, but interestingly, Makuta doesn't seem interested in the god's blessings. As a compromise, Hephaestus agrees to bless Sway, whilst Vahong will bless Dora and Fel for their upcoming dungeon exploration. And just like that, Makuta sends the gods their offerings as a thanks. Before Makuta can make plans to enter the dungeon, he is reminded by Fel that they've already acquired some mithril from slaying the mithril lizard prior. And with Makuta handing off some mithril to Sway, Makuta asks that Sway craft a blade for him. Immediately, Sway swallows and spits out a shiny-looking sword. And although Makuta says they now don't have to search for mithril in the dungeons, Fel cries that they should still check out the dungeon whilst they're in town. Back in his office, Elrond is quite depressed, having not been able to find a replacement blade to butcher the Earth Dragon. But luckily Makuta has brought his own blade. Heading over to the dragon, Elrond grips the new mithril blade type, and with a single push, Elrond seamlessly glides the blade through the dragon's skin. Elrond wonders how Mukuda obtained such a majestic sword, but Mukuda makes up that a friend gave it to him. And now that Elrond can process the dragon, Elrond utters that it may take 3 days to butcher the beast before them. Seeing as they can't just sit idly by, Fel and Dora ask to explore the dungeon whilst they wait, but Mukuda says there is no need. At that moment, Sway adorably asks if they could enter the dungeon, words that ultimately sway Mukuda. Passing through town, Mukuda arrives at the dungeon gates only to hear that it may take upwards of a month to clear the 30 floors in the dungeon, and interestingly, no one has yet to explore the entire dungeon. Mukuda realizes that he hasn't prepared enough food for a 1-month exploration, and with Mukuda preparing to back out, Fel telepathically asks what Mukuda is doing. Mukuda says they need to prepare actual food to fight efficiently, and with Mukuda's familiars agreeing, the gang choose to do some shopping first. Immediately, Mukuda's party draws the attention of onlookers, and when Mukuda is called over to check out some meat and vegetables, he reasons he should stock up on some vegetables before tackling the dungeon. As for the meat, Mukuda is surprised to learn that monster meat is quite luxurious and expensive. So Mukuda says Fel can simply hunt for the meat they need. Settling on some bread and vegetables, Mukuda explores the town, some more only to spot a magic stove with 4 heating elements. Fel wonders why they need such a big stove, but suddenly a store clerk appears, allowing Mukuda to ask how strong the fire can burn. The clerk explains that there are magic stones used to heat the stove, plus there seems to be an oven compartment capable of roasting cockatrices whole, a feature Mukuda's portable gas stove doesn't have. Intrigued, Fel orders Mukuda to buy the stove, since Mukuda can cook new types of food for them. And with Dora begging Mukuda to purchase the stove as well, Mukuda agrees to fork over 860 gold coins for the stove. That night, Mukuda shows off the various pots and pans he purchased from his online store. And having made use of his new stove, Mukuda is able to stew some meats and vegetables while steaming some rice. With Mukuda asking Sway to help him with something, we cut to Mukuda serving up a bull and wyvern meat bowl for the gang, leading everyone to eat their fill. The next day, Mukuda reasons he should prepare some meals in case he is too tired to cook in the dungeon. So starting off, Mukuda strings up some orc meat only to fry and stew it just like if it were pork. Next is some steamed boar wrapped in cabbage, and needing to use up his leftovers, Mukuda whips up some stir-fry bowl and pepper topped off with any leftover sauces. Moving on to a hearty soup, Mukuda chops up some vegetables and begins simmering them alongside some orc meat. And for the final meal prep is some wyvern beef stew. As the sun sets, Mukuda stores away the 5 meals he has prepared, and by tomorrow Mukuda is excited to see Sway has completed the job he asked of him. Proudly, Sway shows off the mithril sword he crafted for Mukuda, but at that moment Ugger appears only to report that Elrond has finished butchering the Earth Dragon. With Mukuda and his party heading over to meet with Elrond, Mukuda can't help but be weirded out when he stumbles on Elrond admiring the dragon's blood he bottled up, but snapping out of it, Elrond shows off every part of the Earth Dragon he harvested. Although it took 3 days, Elrond says it was an amazing 3 days, plus Mukuda says he is happy to sell off any of the materials to the guild. Excited, Elrond says he wants 2 bottles of the dragon's blood, along with half of the dragon's liver to help produce elixirs, and to top things off, Elrond wants a dragon tooth to help craft a mighty sword. Mukuda is surprised Elrond doesn't want anything else, but Elrond says the 5 items are valued at 3,800 coins, so for now he'll give Mukuda 380 coins. Annoyed, Fel demands to know where the edible parts of the dragon are, leading Elrond to escort the gang into their freezer room. Entering a chilly space, the gang are impressed to see magical stones keeping the wrapped up meats inside fresh. News that allows Sway to help retrieve the dragon's meat, all whilst Mukuda stores them in his item box. Unable to wait any longer, Elrond allows Mukuda to visit his home to cook some meat for the gang. And having promised everyone such a thing, Elrond chooses to drag Mukuda to his home, all whilst avoiding his responsibilities as a guild master. Showing the gang to his backyard, Elrond watches as Mukuda retrieves his new stove, and interestingly, Elrond mentions how he has the item box skill as well. Apparently, Elrond was a warrior that wielded a sword alongside plant and wind magic. And whilst Elrond begins rambling on about his past, Mukuda gets to work cooking up some meat. First, Mukuda seasons the dragon meat with some salt and pepper. Next up is peeling and slicing up some carrots, potatoes, and onions, only to lay them on a pan next to the chunk of meat. Drizzling some oil and topping off the meat with some herbs, Mukuda places the pan into his preheated oven to begin roasting, a sight that makes the others begin to drool. After some time, Mukuda takes out the pan only to confirm that the meat has been cooked, and by slicing up the chunk of meat and serving it up with some garlic soy sauce, the gang sit down for a taste. With a single bite, Mukuda becomes speechless at the distinct flavors. Plus, it seems Mukuda's familiars are also dazzled by the meat's plump and unique flavor. Fel says the last dragon he ate was cooked with fire magic, but such a meal doesn't compare to Mukuda's cooking. And with Mukuda serving up seconds for everyone, Mukuda hears that Dora doesn't mind eating other dragons as long as they aren't pixie dragons. Off to the side, Mukuda sees Elrond tearing up as he was able to not only butcher a dragon, but also taste it, things Elrond could only dream of doing. With the gang heading home with a full stomach, Mukuda's familiars jump in excitement as they'll enter the dungeons tomorrow. But this reminds Mukuda to give his offerings before he departs. As Mukuda sifts through his online stores for some items, we zoom out to see the goddesses awaiting Mukuda's offerings. But just then Vahong and Hephaestus appear only to ask if the girls have given Mukuda a defensive skill. Realizing that Mukuda passing away will mean they can no longer get their offerings, the girls begin to panic. But Hephaestus says he has an idea. When Mukuda prepares to send off his offerings, he is suddenly contacted by Hephaestus, who offers up a blessing. And although Mukuda refuses, Hephaestus forcibly gives Mukuda a new skill. Heading to the dungeon the next day, Mukuda is surprised to run into Bianca, who has been asked to help out due to how busy it is in town. As Bianca fills out an entry registration for Mukuda and his familiars to enter the dungeon, she can't help but be captivated by how adorable and fluffy Fel is. With the gang finally heading to the dungeon's entrance, Mukuda is a little nervous, but with his familiars pumped, the gang begin to descend some stairs. Fel mentions how the monsters on the lower floors are too weak, and seeing as most adventurers can make a living hunting from the 10th to the 15th floor, Fel declares they'll be skipping such floors. Immediately, Mukuda rides Fel through the dungeon, and upon encountering some monsters, Fel simply charges through them. At that moment, Mukuda notices a stray arrow heading towards him, but luckily Fel's powerful barrier blocks such an attack. Something Fel notes is due to him stepping on a trap. Fel mentions how dungeons are like living creatures that draw in humans, and by slaying and absorbing humans, the dungeon is able to thrive. But sadly, such traps and monsters have no effect on Fel, as he easily evades the bombardment of projectiles only to leap over a trapdoor using some wind magic. Arriving on the 10th floor, Fel declares that the boss of the floor is a venomous tarantula, so the gang reason they should speedrun the boss. Outside the boss room, we see some adventurers gathered outside, and when Fel appears, Mukuda is forced to calm down the adventurers before they mistake Fel to be a monster. Seeing as Mukuda is a newbie to dungeons, the adventurers explain that parties that start fights get first priority on the loot and droppings, and other parties aren't allowed to intervene unless asked. And sadly, it seems there is already an existing party in the boss room. Forced to wait, Mukuda's familiars immediately grow impatient. But not before long, Mukuda spots the adventurers returning, having survived their battle. The adventurers report that they'll be leaving now since they have families. But Mukuda's gang excitedly enters the room only to be met by various tarantulas. Immediately, Dora conjures a fire spell that incinerates all the monsters, and interestingly, the tarantulas have dropped some items Mukuda stores in his item box. With the gang impatient, they rush towards the 11th floor boss, and immediately the gang are able to dispatch the army of orcs in the boss room. Before moving on, Mukuda's familiars mention how they're hungry, and with Fel leading the gang to a safe room where other adventurers are resting, they coincidentally bump into Iron Will. Choosing to catch up, Mukuda explains how his familiars have been dying to explore the dungeon, and with Mukuda introducing Dora, the pixie dragon, to the Iron Will members, the gang are forced to hold back their laughter. Up next is Sway. A slime Rita finds adorable, and whilst the girls hang out with Sway and Dora, Fel demands some food. Immediately perking up, Iron will asks if they can eat as well, and with Mukuta happy to serve them. Mukuta takes out his wyvern stew whilst Rita slices up some of their bread to go along with the meal. Having craved Mukuta's cooking, the Iron Will members begin to stuff their faces, and before the Iron Will members can apologize for eating so much, Mukuta instead offers to serve everyone seconds. With everyone eating their fill, we see some adventurers watching their feast from afar, and with everyone parting ways, Iron Will mentions how they'll be exploring their current floor before descending. Getting to work, Mukuta's familiars are easily able to slay the dungeon bosses from the 12th floor all the way to the 15th, and before they know, they're traversing the 16th floor. Mukuta takes note of the change in the dungeon's environment, but suddenly Fel steps onto a trap, an action that creates a large rumbling sound. Upon seeing a massive boulder rolling down their path, Mukuta prepares to flee, but with the wave of his paw, Fel decimates the boulder. After some more time, Mukuta reports that they've made it to the 20th floor, but Dora and Fel still seem excited. At that moment, Sway calls out to everyone only to point Mukuta to a chest he found, and before Mukuta can rush to unveil the treasures hidden in the chest, Fel pulls Mukuta back only to remind Mukuta that this may be a trap set up by the dungeon. Realizing that Fel is right, Mukuta uses his appraisal skill to uncover that the chest will release poison when opened, a horrific discovery since Mukuta's minor blessing won't protect him. At that moment, Ninlil contacts Mukuta only to reveal that since Mukuta has multiple minor blessings layered on him, it would be the same as having a major blessing. Seeing as Ninrir says Mukuta will be able to withstand the poison, Mukuta rushes to open the chest only for the gang to be struck by fumes of poisonous gas. Sadly, it seems the chest is empty, a discovery that annoys Mukuta. But upon reaching the 21st floor, Mukuta bumps into a massive-looking chest. Upon appraising it, Mukuta sees that it is a mimic that may drop a chest when defeated, ultimately leading Mukuta to draw his mithril sword to slay the creature. When Mukuta opens the chest, the mimic springs to life and attacks Mukuta, but by swinging his sword around, Mukuta is able to slice up the mimic without issue. Inspecting the chest the mimic dropped, Mukuta is amazed to have found various rare jewels and a recovery ring. And upon descending to the next floor, Mukuta is amazed by the clearing they've run into. Although Fel is excited, he declares that he can smell something dangerous nearby, and with Mukuta riding Fel deeper into the floor, they suddenly are swarmed by some giant killer mantis with a B rank. Instantly, Fel begins to swell with magic, and with various streaks of lightning raining down, Fel easily slays the monsters. But this annoys Dora and Sway, who wanted to fight as well. Calming everyone down, Mukuta says everyone will get their turn, and with Dora up next, he is seen engaging a grizzly bear. As for Sway, he gets to face off against some poisonous butterflies, and seeing as they're approaching the boss of the floor, Mukuta reasons they should eat first before engaging the creature. Although Fel says the boss won't be a trouble for them, he still allows Mukuta to whip up a meal for them. And interestingly, Mukuta says they'll be having some domestic Japanese Wagyu steak. Mukuta reasons that they should have some pork, duck, chicken, and sandwiches as well. And whilst Mukuta feeds the gang the pre-cooked chicken and duck, he gets to work cooking up the remaining meats. Meal after meal, Mukuta and his familiars stuff themselves with the assorted meats, and with each plate dusted off, Mukuta chooses to check everyone's stats. Mukuta is glad to see Fel, Dora, and Sway's stats have risen by 50%, but when Mukuta checks his own, he is disappointed to see his stats haven't even been boosted by 5%.